What are the best standard decks for Cardfight Vanguard right now? This is probably one of the most controversial parts of the year. I do one of these videos once every 3 months or so, and it gives time for, I guess, the environment, the competitive environment to kind of build lots of set releases. And with the new release of Harri and Nightrose, let's just go through all the ride lines, all the decks for standard, and just kind of see what the BCS landscape will be like. Because obviously a lot of the sets in Japan at the moment will overlap into the BCS season. And for those of you guys who are going for your Worlds invite, you guys got to know what the best decks are and how to play against them. So a lot of these ride lines are, I guess, unsupported, or the support is very minimal, or the deck isn't as relevant. So I'm going to skip through those. Those that are, I guess, a bit more impactful in the competitive metagame, then I'll start talking about them a little bit more, right? So we'll just go through just a bunch of random stuff, but we'll talk about the big elephant in the room, and that is Shoujo Doji. Shoujo Doji at the moment is the best deck in the format. It is so flexible. Minimum 5 attacks. It's actually minimum 4 attacks, but with the grade 2 promo, Kuyodachi, pretty much you get multiple attacks, right? I think you can get up to like 7, and it rips cards apart. So like you bind 2 units from your opponent's field, you rip a card out of their hand, you place them all into the drop zone. It is probably the most flexible deck and probably one of the strongest decks, if not the strongest, going first. 100% Shoujo Doji is the deck to, I guess, beat at the moment. But we won't actually know if there's going to be like some sort of ban list that's going to come out in the next strategy presentation. So yeah, for as of this recording, Shoujo Doji is the best deck in the format. So a few other ones that I guess aren't as relevant. So I guess I probably should go through the tiers. S tier is the best deck, or the best decks in the format. A is just behind it by a bit. B is like the benchmark, B for benchmark, right? So you're going into BCS. This is like the bare minimum that I would play. Anything under that is stuff that I would, like, you know, play around at locals, right? So S for Shoujo Doji. Shoujo Doji is the best deck, right? Triumph Dragon at the moment is not great. There's not very good support. I know that there's a new restander that kind of uses Triumph Dragon as, I guess, like a rear guard or something, and then you have to shout something to restand, but that's you know, coming out very soon. Whatever this is, as you can see, because I don't know of this, it's probably not as relevant. I think this was one of the ride lines from set 3, if I'm not mistaken, or set 2 potentially, not making an impact at all. Varga, I think Varga is formidable. This one is a little bit tricky. I think it's either the top of A or the bottom of A, depending on which format you're talking about. If you're talking about the JP format, it might be a little bit lower. If you're talking about the English format against Shoujo Doji, then it's obviously higher, right? It just has everything. It's pretty much technically an unconditional restand. Gets big rear guards. It has a new support in set 4, which is really strong. And it pretty much has everything, except for a counter jump, obviously. But you know, you got to gate it somehow. So yeah, Varga in A tier, I think it's a really good deck to bring to BCS. Other things like Eugene, we don't have very much information, I guess, or anything for Eugene at the moment. So let's just leave Eugene still there. Results will show, and you know, that's that. Direful Dolls, I think Direful Dolls is okay. I'll probably wait till the new shop promo comes out in Japan to see how this deck kind of evolves, but at the moment it's formidable, right? Look here, so I did make a video of this previously. I think the deck is just not suitable for the competitive landscape. I think the deck needs a lot. It's a very glass cannon-y deck. If you don't draw well, if your opponent goes first, if your opponent Shoujo Doji, you get absolutely destroyed. And even if you're playing against like Varga, you kind of have to sack your way out of it, and it's just, it's not great, right? Also largest, not real much support other than, I guess, PR support later in the year. Koti Blaze, you know, a little bit better than some of these because it's actually got alright support. Alcalibra, I think I don't think it's an A tier deck. I think it's high B, brinking of A. It's a very aggressive deck, and the longer the game goes, it gets better because it consistently hits big, and your opponent just can't always guard big numbers. And I think that's what Alcalibro does well. I guess you can probably put it at end of A, but I think that's giving it like a lot of respect, especially if you're talking about like, you know, Shiranui and some of the other decks. So I think putting it in B is sufficient. Sacrifice Glass, yeah, it's a fun deck. I think it's not as great into some of the other stuff that is available. Christianos, pretty much kind of where all the other start deck stuff is. Lascaria, I think Lascaria is okay. There's newer stuff, newer support. There's obviously new support coming in for set 5. But I think the deck is just okay, right? Formidable enough to bring to BCS. Marlene is probably better than some of the other start decks. Mortalian is just okay. I don't think we need to talk too much about that. Same with this. Rezael, I think Rezael is alright. It's pretty formidable. It does a lot with like a small card pool, and it just does what it does well. And sometimes that's all you really need, to be honest. Lutetia, I think, is okay. This Honolly grade 3 is okay. Michu, I think Michu is pretty good. I think the aggressiveness of the deck and being able to filter out a bunch of stuff. Obviously, it's a glitter that jumps similar to Eva, and it just hits big. Hits big. You know, if you flip a bunch of crits, you just win. You have a lot of filtering. The deck is really, really strong. I think I played this in a lot of casual matches while I was at Springfest Vietnam, and I think the deck is really strong. I'm not too sure how it goes into set 4 meta, but I think still it's a formidable deck to bring to BCS. Chris Rain. Chris Rain, I think, is higher of B, but I think it's missing one thing to make it really, really strong. But I guess, like, it kind of would be, you know, on the side of Alden, new Alden, and it's really defensive, but in terms of Chris Rain itself, it's tanky, it hits big, and, you know, it just does what it does well, yeah? Flame G is just okay. The Vanilla grade 3 is just okay. Lilfa is okay? Lilfa's just big with defense. I guess it's just okay. Medial's just okay. Kyoka, I think, is higher up here. It got a lot of really good support in the recent lyrical set, and I think there was a few results from Japan, but I think it's dropped off with the, you know, introduction of set 4. With the Stride deck sets, I think the power level of that just doesn't match those other decks. Vermilion needs a lot of help, but I think it's, you know, in C. Virgila as well. Blangmire, I think Blangmire is one of the more formidable decks in the format. In set 4 meta, it's actually pretty good into Shojidoji. It's a little bit, I wouldn't say it's Luxaki, but its Divine Skill is extremely strong because it just negates Sentinels for the whole turn, and if you get even slightly lucky and you push your opponent high on damage, your opponent just actually can't do anything. Vaidrock Dragon is a really strong support because it needed a big attacker, and Vaidrock Dragon is, you know, pretty much all what the deck asked for, right? So I think Blangmire is one of the stronger decks, probably one of the higher top tier decks in the format at the moment. Unrivaled Bruce needs some help. Eugene definitely needs some help. Lixiafel. I think Lixiafel is pretty good. It'd probably be here or maybe A, but I think putting it in A is giving it too much respect. I know that a lot of these you can kind of move it around. Some are brinking the tier above or the tier below. So it's pretty flexible on like how you kind of move these around. Lixiafel I think is alright. I think it just needs a little bit more touch and then it'd be like a pretty good deck. Hazoret is just there. Verts, okay. I would probably pick like all of the other lyrical decks above Vert. Maybe I'm giving this too much respect. Maybe it like goes down here. Because you're pretty much like competing against like Lishafel, Michu, and Kyoka. I think these three are way more outstanding than these two. Alden, I think Alden is pretty strong. It's very tanky. It does what it does well. I think a lot of these decks, you just need to play the deck's game plan and then it's good. And I think Alden is very strong in a meta where it's super aggressive. If it's, you know, farming a lot, defensively it's really strong. Both quantity and quality. So Alden, I think, is a kind of a sleeper, I think, brinking from B to A. So yeah, that's where Alden sits. Empoleon. So I did make a pretty controversial take on Empoleon. And Empoleon, to be honest, is just okay. It makes it a little bit annoying for a lot of these aggressive decks, but a lot of the decks above Empoleon and the B tier hits like a truck where the exceed order doesn't really matter, even if you get like plus 5k, plus 10k defensive, so you're on like a 28 base, it doesn't really matter because everything above it just hits too high. So Empoleon is just here until it gets, you know, solid support going forward. Dayusha, I think Dayusha is formidable. I don't know if I want to. I'll put it in low B. It's just okay. Maybe it's like Brinking C. But I don't know. You know, people who play it will play it. That's just the reality. Archite is also in here. I think the support that Archite got was alright, but its counterpart Eva is much stronger. Rotovisor needs a little bit of help, but I guess it's like, yeah, I'll just chuck it in there in no particular order. These decks are in no particular order. Star Raja was good-ish, but I think it needs a little bit more. Levadras, I think Levadras is okay. I think the deck just does what it does, but it's nowhere close to a lot of these other decks who have gotten like multiple waves of support, like Vargar, Blankmaya. I think Michu is just like an outlier. I think Michu is just really strong. But Levadras, just give it like 1 or 2 sets and then I think it will jump straight to A tier, I think. Wellstra, I think Wellstra is pretty strong. It's higher on the B side, but competing with some of these, I think it's, you know, not as strong. I think Black, the counterpart for Wellstra, is actually quite strong, potentially outclassing Wellstra itself. But I think, you know, putting it in high B, brinking of A is kind of where it sits. Coral is just okay. Bavsagra needs help. Mahanirvana needs help. Dote is... Why play Dote when you can play Vargar? And, you know, a lot of people just play Dote because Dote's cool. And, you know, I get it. Jiva is just there. Gandiva is just there. Zedlins needs help. Tamayura is low brinking B, I think. I don't know. The deck is really good in set 2. Once it got to set 3 with Shoujo Doji and like a lot of the other stuff, I think it got outclassed. Get into set 4, it's alright. It's just okay. So I think I'll put Tamayura there. Any higher, I think, is giving it too much respect. This Barphomedes needs help. Favania needs help. Favania is going to get some pretty cool support. The news card looks really cool. Spider-Maki needs help. Shunui. Shunui is still one of the best decks in the format and is pretty much Dragon Empire land at this point. Even with the ride line restriction and the OT, the Dual Nation Grade 2 made this deck really strong, can recur Shenris, can have an early game, and that's pretty much all Stride decks ever wanted, right? An early game, contesting for first Stride against other Stride decks, and Shunui just does that well. Pretty much 7 attacks every turn. Yeah, it's been there, done that, and it's still doing what it's doing, which is really strong. Graham Grace will see support very soon. Hexa Orb is just there, I guess. Ezel needs some support. Bastion. Bastion Accord is like somewhere here. Bastion Accord is like, it's like a rogue pick that sometimes just slips in at the moment of time. I think Bastion, if a format is in a particular point where, let's just say, you know, Shoujo Doji falls off a little bit and then some of the other decks come above it, right? Like, for example, Stride Decksets become a bit more popular, then Bastion is kind of there, but it needs something else to kind of boost it. Megalonozuchi is just there. Viman's Bruce got the new grade 1 that restands. So I guess maybe like up here. I wouldn't put it in B. I probably wouldn't bring it to a BCS. Astroya, so Unica is here somewhere. Greedon Mask was good in the previous formats, but now it's just kind of sitting there. Omino Gruzio is the same. Chaos. I think Chaos is... it's formidable. I think it's got a lot of thing going for it. Double Mikani restands, huge power, guard restrict. Yeah, it's got, you know, formidable stuff. Like, I would probably bring Chaos to a regional if I'm not bringing anything from S and A. You know, if I'm, you know, if I qualified for Worlds and I'm like, you know, just chilling, memeing around, like I would probably pick Chaos to bring. I think it's one of the decks that is pretty cool, and you know, I'll roll with it. Then Liel Amorta. I don't know. The deck doesn't really do much. It's more splashable in like other decks like Raziel and Luard, like Hostage. So I think it's missing a lot. Barrow Magnus. This guy needs a lot of help. I guess a new one is just slightly better, but I would not bring it to a regional. Minerva is now outclassed by pretty much Varga, really. Yeah, Minerva is... I wouldn't put Minerva too low. I would put like, I don't know, somewhere mid here. But yeah, Minerva is outclassed now. PBO is brinking B, I think. The Ordeal Dragon is pretty good, and if you build it correctly and you play it correctly, it's pretty scary. But I think it needs a lot to jump up a tier. So maybe Leverdress like goes into C. Yeah, I think maybe Leverdress goes into C, Archive goes into C, Dayusha, and Empoleon, if we're playing it that way. And maybe Lutetia as well, right? Because then if you're playing the B tier decks, it's like stuff that you would probably bring. Then maybe Arnold is like under, but these are like bringing B tier, yeah? What's this? Time Stamping Dragon, no. Solarion, no. Tegria isn't getting much support. Luard. This one's a hard one. I think Luard... oh, I don't know. I think Luard just kind of sits here. No Sir Gawain plays Hostage, but the rest of the meta is like a control meta. So Luard just automatically loses its main game plan. But I think the deck with the undercover stuff is pretty good. So I think, you know, you got to give it respect. I think putting it in... it would be like low A, I think. Maybe I'll give it a bit more respect. I'll put it in A. But yeah, again, it's a deck that breaks A and B at the moment. Silhouette is just whatever. Mask, Orphis as well. Eva, I think, is pretty alright. Note that obviously S, A, and B tier are decks that I would bring to a BCS. I wouldn't bring any of these, but I would probably look to bring some of these. Maybe other than like PBO. I think PBO is pretty cool, right? I think PBO just naturally is a cool deck. So yeah, I put it there. Brinking B, I'd bring it to a regional. But I think Eva, it does what it does. It's still seeing results in Japan, and yeah. It's coming off a previous format where, you know, it was good. Yeah, it was a main pick for Springfest season, but obviously with the introduction of Shujodoji, set 3, set 4, it might actually fall off. So maybe I would like put it in high B. I think it's still a respectable deck that I would bring to a regional. Zorga Nadir. Zorga Nadir is alright. Maybe there, it would maybe slightly go lower, just because a lot of decks just outclass it at the moment. Youthberg needs a bit more support. Luan is a Caterpile. Alden is outclassed by the new one. This ride line, I'm pretty sure no one has ever thought of. Heroes is okay. I think it's just there somewhere. Vanguard, it needs a bit of help. Messiah, I think Messiah is pretty good. We'll put Messiah in B. Definitely not an A tier deck in comparison to a lot of these other Stride decks, but I think with the Dual Nation stuff, it's pretty formidable. MLB got a bit of support. If MLB, so I guess if we were talking JP format, then it has Blaster Blade, the Vanguard, and I think that really makes the deck strong. So I guess I'll put it in B. It's a formidable deck that I'll probably bring to a regional. Maelstrom needs some help. Grandfield needs help. Claudine needs help. Rorowa probably here. Magnolia Mass is outclassed. Leonorn. I think Leonorn is pretty strong. It's such a sleeper deck in every single format, and it just sees results always. Like, I think the deck is just a really strong face deck that doesn't really care about what your opponent does, and if you get even slightly lucky, you just absolutely blow your opponent out of the water. I think Leonorn is really strong in that way. Magnolia Elder is here. Flagberg needs help. Gvidia, Misty Arc. Kyrie, I think Kyrie is alright. Has the Dragon Grade 4 with Shield. Jejuled, I think Jejuled is alright. I think it just needs to do what it does. And sometimes you just win because of the sheer power scaling of this card jumping from grade 3 to grade 4. And sometimes you just need to draw the grade 4, right? This is old Michu, we'll put that there. Old Lilfa, old Lutetia, Hazoret, Mediel, Kyoka, Patrolka, Clarissa's down there. Alestial is just okay. Willista is probably high C somewhere. Herminia. There. Fennel is here somewhere. Fortia. Shamo is pretty decent. It's seen results and still seeing results. I think Shamo is quite good. Just hits big. Sienna's down here. Labrador's there. Labrador was a counter pick to Shiranui, but I think a lot of decks are up here that you kind of need to consider and just outpowers Labrador. Pacifica down here. Felty, Loro. Prison. I think Prison's pretty formidable. I think the deck has restanding grade 2s, and sometimes you just choke your opponent out of resources and they literally can't do anything. There are obviously matchups where Prison has a hard time, but I think a lot of decks at the moment are very, how should I say, resource is scarce for a lot of these decks. So I think Prison is a nice pick, especially if a lot of decks need resources like Soul, Counterblast, and you can kind of choke them out of resources. So that's that. This is there. Chronojet. I think Chronojet's pretty good. It's definitely not in Shunui tier, but I think with the Energy Blast package, Clockwise, Folklore, the EB Cycler, there's a lot of potential for Jet to get better. I think Jet is just missing something to jump it up a tier. But yeah, Jet's pretty cool. Then we'll look at, okay, so like all the Ragnarok stuff just kind of goes down here. Completely unsupported collab, English only, and it hasn't seen anything. Same with Shaman King. Shaman King is past its time, unfortunately. So I didn't even realize how many Shaman King ride lines there were. Token. Training Tools is okay. Same with Munechika. I think those two are alright. Kashu as well. But I think if you're playing these three, there are other decks in this tier that I guess perform what it does better. But the good thing is that Token Rambu, no one knows about Token Rambu or what it does. So, you know, you have that surprise factor. And then pretty much all of the other ones just kind of goes here. Mushi King is up here. I don't know, I would bring Mushi King. Mushi King's pretty cool. Sometimes you just like restand the Vanguard, hit a bunch of crits and you just win. So we'll put it in C. I wouldn't bring it to regional now. There would be like other decks I would bring. So that's that. Or maybe then that's like no, I think Token Rambu is better outclassed than Mushi King. So the Quints. The Quints actually don't have any presence at the moment, but the generic stuff in each of the nations just kind of fuel it. Morphonica is alright. Mygo's good, still good, really good collab deck. I would bring to regional again, but I've played it, so I'll probably play something else. Benny is, I think, a really good deck. I think it's up here. If Benny comes out in English, I probably would play it. I would definitely bring it to regional. So please, Bushro, bring V-Spo to English, because I would play Benny at a regional. I've played it in JP, and I think the deck is pretty strong. Now, Emma is maybe here. And then this trial deck Radland goes here. Liel, I think, goes in C for now. I think it's one wave of support away from being really good. Extra turn stuff is really strong. So I foresee this deck being absolutely busted in like 2 to 3 sets time. Then Love and Berry, I have no idea what's going on. Love and Berry, I think, is in D tier for the moment until more support comes out. But I think it looks pretty good. It's like Token Rambu Light, except with more effects. Black, I think Black is really strong. Maybe like somewhere up here. It's definitely, I think it's better than Welstra. It does what Welstra wants to do, but with less barriers, I think. So yeah, Black and Welsh just kind of go together, but I wouldn't put Black above. Maybe it does. I don't know. Haven't tested enough to justify jumping this upper tier. But yeah, Black, probably a deck I would bring because the aesthetics look cool, right? Then a lot of these kind of just go like here, maybe. Deca Boy. Deca Boy doesn't really have support, and Bebe doesn't have really support. All right, two of the most hot topics at the moment is Harri and Nightrose, and where I would rate these two decks. So Nightrose, I think Nightrose is an A tier deck. I think the deck is not offensively strong, but it just grinds the game out until the point where you just naturally win. It just gains a lot of hand. It has a Largolf to be able to bring back your EV cyclers. Elvina, it has a lot for it, right? So I think Nightrose on paper looks really weak offensively, but I think the more that you play Nightrose and you're chaining the 5 attacks, and you're just getting like a thick hand, not a lot of decks can actually burn through that hand. This is a bit controversial, I think. We don't really have the results to support it, but from what I've been playing, I think Nightrose is up there somewhere. And then the deck that I absolutely love, Harri. So I actually don't know. So I think it's biased to put it in A because I like Harri. And I think if I'm putting Harri in A, then actually Michu should be like down more, right? Because what is Harri playing against? It's playing against Shoujo Doji, Shunui, Vaga, Blangmai, Leonorn, and Nightrose. And I think a lot of these decks outclass that. And yes, Harri does get a gigantic hand, but I think it it suffers the early game, which is something that a lot of these other decks have. So I would put it in like high B. It 100% will be a deck that I will play at a regional, no questions asked. But I think if I'm talking about just sheer power and what the deck wants to do against everything else in the format, yeah, it just kind of sits here. And I think, like, in due respect, if it's that way, then I would put like Luard and Michu under it, right? So it'd be like something like that, because these definitely outclass, you know, it's S, A, and then pretty much everything else, right? So like these are brinking A. So if I were to be a little bit more lenient and I guess generous, then I would put like Harry here, Luard here, Benny here, Michu here, something like this. And I think, you know, if you tone down Shoujo Doji, there's a lot of variety in the format, and that's how I would probably classify it. So yeah, that is pretty much me rambling on the 50 bajillion ride lines that we have in Vanguard. This is pretty much the landscape of what you see at the BCS season. And obviously, Harri and Nightrose do come out in January, so we'll probably see a lot of this in the second half of the season. There will probably be more JP results as well to kind of back this. And, you know, this is just how I think the format will be. And, you know, maybe some magical person out there can prove me wrong with some of these decks. And, you know, I hope somebody out there is playing black and makes this deck win a regional, because I actually really like this deck. It looks really cool, and I hope it has, you know, good results backing it. So yeah, that's pretty much the video. If you guys liked it, pop a like, comment down below what you guys think of the format going into the BCS season and where you would think some decks would rank. Obviously, this is my opinion, so this is pretty much how I depict what BCS will be. Let me know down in the comments if there is anything that you would change, and subscribe if you haven't. I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.